thanks for joining us. I know it's the last part of the day. It's awesome to have you guys here. My name's Katrinka McCallum. I run operations for our products and technologies groups, which includes our business units as well as our engineering teams. And this is...
My name is Jay Ferrandini. I run a group called P&T DevOps for Red Hat, and I work for Katrinka. So
yeah, and we're here to tell you about like real life activities going on. You're going to take a journey with us through our world. You see some odd pictures on there about a banana and a pickle, and we are going to tell you a story about our lives. So let's go.
Okay. Let me see if I can get this thing to go. Okay.
All right, so to quickly go through an agenda, we're going to talk about the banana pickle problem that we experience, and then we're going to introduce a little bit more about our P&T DevOps team, and then we have 4 short stories to share with you about how we're using Red Hat products to actually improve our work. Ooh, my microphone's going. How we use Red Hat products in our everyday life. All right?
Okay. So, here you go.
So the banana pickle story. This is a journey that started 3 years ago or so for me. I actually have been with Red Hat for over 9 years, but about 3 years ago I actually took on the responsibilities of our engineering operations. A couple of years ago, our key stakeholder, Tim Burke, who is the leader of infrastructure engineering, for some of you may know Tim and you may have seen him over the years at Summit, he came and met with Jay's leadership team and just showed this as a picture of the experience that they have as a customer of our team. Jay joined us about 2 years ago, and he was kind of sheepishly trying to bring this to my attention, saying, I think we have a little bit of an issue with our stakeholders. So, what is the banana? Tim is describing, this is what they wanted. This is what our engineering teams need. The black box in the middle was our team at that time. We were actually a set of nested black boxes, if you really want to know the truth, of some of our teams not even talking to the other parts of our team. And these are sort of the growing pains that we were experiencing. We were experiencing some of this as we had grown over the years. Our portfolio at Red Hat, of course, has expanded. Our team is expanding. And some of the challenges that we were experiencing was just around some communications, clear charter, and some of the ability for us to actually know who our customers are or what they needed. However, we were really good at working through problems. We were tirelessly working through problems. And we were actually, after a series of time and months, we would actually produce what we thought was the solution to what engineering wanted. And out would come this beautiful pickle. We would deliver it with fanfare. We would deliver it with this prideful joy that we were solving their needs. And Tim's team would look at us and say, but we wanted something yellow. We wanted something sweeter. We wanted something that we could peel. It didn't matter, right? We just were so disconnected that we were actually not delivering on time what they needed. So clearly we had a problem. And that is the dilemma of what we want to share with you, is how have we worked through the banana pickle debate within our team.
Good, thank you. So introducing a group called P&T DevOps. So this is the team that I run, and that was a really big camera. I have to behave myself because we're being recorded, but it's our first time presenting at Summit today, and I have to just tell you the story. On the way here, a bird pooped. See the camera? A bird pooped on my backpack, and according to my grandmother, that's incredibly good luck. So I'm hoping the rest of today didn't seem like good luck, and washing it off was not fun. But anyway, when I joined Red Hat, we started the DevOps mission about 1.5 years ago, and we took a bunch of teams. Some of them existed, some of them we realized we needed to create, and we kind of jammed them all together into a group, and we call the group P&T DevOps, which is kind of weird. Like, the team is named DevOps. A better name might be DevOps-enablement team, but we wanted to make absolutely certain that everybody knew what we were trying to do. So that's that. So after we created the team, we created over on the right there's kind of a 3-year plan for the team. It's not meant to be read, that little eye chart up there, but I can talk about that a little bit after the show if you like. And then the left side here, this is, I guess I'll call it not stolen, but open source from the Target presentation. and this slide here, this was at last year's Red Hat Summit. It really hit me. It said, Gartner's thing, 90% of groups that undergo a DevOps transformation fail unless they address the culture first. So that's kind of what we did. And in addition to combining all these teams and jamming them through this funnel and sticking them all in one group and saying we all win or we all lose, no silos, none of this stuff, we also implemented something that kind of turned us from a service organization to a partner organization. So when you come to us and you want something, we'll probably say yes, but we'll say yes only if you give us one of your people or, one of your architects actually sits in the meetings with us. And that's one way that we avoid the banana pickle scenario. We actually take stakeholders and put them in with our teams in an embedded model, and that's how we go from start to finish. And we almost always deliver bananas with that approach. So here's some of the partnerships that we've actually undertaken in the last 18 months. And these are the products that we use. Ansible, obviously, if anybody was in the last session or has been at any summit or read any technical news in the last couple of years, you've probably heard about Ansible. We're huge fans of Ansible. We'll get into that a little bit more. Obviously, the Red Hat storage products, we're very big users of them. CloudForms, a bunch of middleware products, and we're going to talk about these throughout the presentation. OpenShift is something that we're really excited about. Rev is our big production hypervisor environment. OpenStack gives us our private cloud capability for our central CI program, which is probably one of our strongest partnerships with the P&T QE organization, the product QE organization. In that case, they actually gave us 7 resources, believe it or not, 7 people to put onto my team to make sure that this thing works really well, and it's been going great. And then, of course, RHEL and Satellite we use. So what's important here to note is that the word partnership, right, the participation thing, I think it's on the front of this here, very, very important thing. So having these groups participate and work with us on this model allowed us to give all kinds of stuff back to the products. And when we're giving stuff back to the products, they come back for more, and it just ends in this really cool cycle. And here's just some of the things that we've done. I won't go through all of these, but some of the Ansible playbooks that you might actually download as a customer, they might have come from us in many cases. So an internal tool team putting these things together. I'm sorry, one thing I forgot to mention, we have a bunch of, we'll call them hecklers in the crowd here, and we have Shadi Narayanan from Cisco IT, Jen over here, Agile.
Cisco IT, Red Hat IT.
I'm sorry, I came from Cisco before, and it kind of gets stuck in my head when I'm presenting. Jen, who's an Agile expert. We have some previous presenters here. Gordon, who's a DevOps evangelist. I'm sorry, technology evangelist. I'm sorry, DevOps evangelist also. Matt Herbert, who's an automation expert, and Rob Potts up front here, who is my development lead. So after this, we're going to stick around if you guys just want to hang out. We'll even go get beers if you want. So anyway, we are actively involved in upstream projects. So we use the products, we contribute back to them, and it's just, if you're in the keynote this morning, it gives you a sense of purpose, like you're doing something really cool for the world when you're contributing to these things. And what's cool about Red Hat, as opposed to where I came from, Cisco, great company, but that's a very closed company. Here, as a customer, you can actually participate just like we're participating internally. It's really, really cool and interesting. Some of the other stuff that we've done, we draft knowledge base articles so that you as a customer can actually get an article from someone who has deployed the technology and made it work. And we write the article after we do that usually so that we get it right. And the defect one is a big one for me. Since we started this DevOps mission 18 months ago, we've actually filed 1,100 product defects against all of the products that you guys hopefully buy and use. So we're actually finding product defects, getting them fixed before they get out into the field. That's something that never happened before. And that contributes to quality on a whole different level.
Before you go on,
sure, please.
I just think what's really been cool about the way that the DevOps team has started to transform, it's been as Jay said, it's an enablement team, right? So the partnership, the dev side is actually our customer. It's Red Hat Engineering and Red Hat QE. And they're actually huge parts of all of these products that we're working with, and partnering with them in a way that gives them a sense of what it's like to operate these products in production modes or in our daily jobs, to be able to build the tools that these engineers or QE teams rely on to do their jobs. So we've created sort of this iterative sort of feedback loop with our internal customer. And what's pretty cool is we're flipping it around, actually. It's more of an ops dev model than it is a DevOps model in a way, because what we're bringing to the table is the operator experience point of view. And so what we've been, Jay might not say this publicly, but I've been challenging the team to be customer zero. I want every product that we're working on at Red Hat to actually be a product that we can take through our team and actually demonstrate that we can implement that product before we release it to our customers. We're getting there. We're starting to work with our QB team as part of this, and we're starting to work with our engineering team to give them that feedback loop of the releases. Here are some of our experiences that we're finding in the beta cycle or in the release candidates before the products actually come out the door. So that's been a really neat partnership for us to actually start to take and own that presence of customer zero with our product managers and our engineering leaders.
Definitely. Okay, so we're going to take you through just 4 stories. We just kind of randomly picked some stories here. We have hundreds. Like I said, we'll be willing to talk about these. Could talk about this all night if you want. But we picked 4 here. And Katrinka, I think you're going to introduce these.
So obviously, as an ops team, one of the things we have to be able to do is we have to be able to manage our infrastructure. So we have the bug tracking systems, we have the QE tools, the test case management systems. We need to be able to make sure that the applications that we run that our internal customers use are up and running every day. We had a multitude of self-selected sort of pieces of that puzzle, but one of the challenges that we've taken on is how do we make that more streamlined? How do we actually make that more effective so we can be more efficient and that we actually understand how our tools are operating? So what did we do, Jay?
Well, in the last year or so, we've Ansibleized. I don't think that's a word, but I'm coining that.
Is it a word?
It is, really? Ansibleized. Awesome. I thought I invented it, so okay, good. We've Ansibleized about 400 hosts. Now, our environment is something like 8,000 nodes, and there's probably about 400 hosts that manage those 8,000 nodes in one way or another. And previous to this, Red Hat was good at doing DevOps, but we did it in a bunch of different ways, right? We had Salt, Puppet, Chef, all kinds of stuff. All the way down to scripts and cron jobs and legacy stuff that had been there for 15 years. We basically standardized on Ansible. We did that before Red Hat bought Ansible, so thank God we actually went with that choice, because that would have been kind of weird if we picked something else. But the reason the title is Ansible Brings Global Peace is because making that decision was a huge battle, right? And you guys would probably undergo the same thing if you have all kinds of bits and pieces of automation all over the place. It actually got pretty heated at one point, and that's a common thing at Red Hat for us to just debate and in the open culture and just debate and come to the final decision. Once everybody kind of got everything out, we settled on Ansible. We made the choice for Ansible, and then thank God we bought Ansible, because that has made things even better and much cooler.
But more importantly, you chose Ansible Tower, right?
We chose Ansible first and Ansible Tower, yeah. So we had all kinds of people there, and people will tell you all these kind of stories. I think it was in the last talk, right, Gordon? I mean, there's all examples of how Ansible will make your life amazing. In our case, they're the same things, right? When we want to patch these 400 hosts, or we want to do something, update one of these things, it's just, like one button press, and, we'll do funny things like how many times can we spin around in a chair while the thing is updating. And some of these things we've gone from, 16, 20 days down to 10 minutes, right? That's the Ansible story. You'll hear that all the time. It's an absolutely true thing, and we'll be glad to show you guys how we did that. Very, very interesting technology, very cool. It also gives us other capabilities like rewind, right? How many times do you use Control-Z in your life in any type of application, right? We can now do that with deployments. It's pretty crazy that we have that capability. It still boggles my mind when you deploy something, it's broken, and you just rewind. Well, I guess that didn't work. So it allows you to take more risks, more chances, and it's just a better place to work. The next line there, the biz line, it's kind of hard to read there, but basically, it has allowed us to take advantages of gaps in programs and actually turn them into productivity. So the example I wrote up there was something that just happened recently. We were trying to talk about stuff that we just did. And we had about a 10-week gap in a program, and we had a bunch of gear that was just going to be sitting there for 10 weeks. And that was kind of the norm. That's the norm at many companies. Don't touch those systems. They're going to be used in 10 weeks. We went to the product team, said, hey, we have Ansible. We know we can do this with confidence. We want to blow away your production environment and use it for something else for the next 10 weeks, and then we'll put it back the way it was. Right? And now this group was kind of like, oh, that sounds really scary, but we trust you guys, so let's see what happens. And it worked. So we actually got 10 weeks of extra, this is $1 million setup we're talking about here. We got to use it for an additional 10 weeks, and that happens all over the place. The ability to deploy, rewind, all that kind of stuff. You get it. So, Katrinka, back to you with your awesome statement.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that was striking to me was, as I said, I've got a year longer with working with this team than Jay does, and some of the folks on the team were pretty polarized inside of our group. Our developers within the applications development team absolutely did not have an appreciation for what our SysOps team was doing to roll out applications into production. Today, our SysOps team will write a playbook, and then the actual developer team will actually add to that playbook. And what it's done is it's given the team an ability to see what each other is doing and to have a little bit more of an appreciation for the level of effort it takes to be able to take an update to our Bugzilla app or something like that and be able to roll that into production. And what it's really done is it's brought these teams together, and it's taken the tension out within our own organization, let alone the tension or the ability to meet some of our internal customers' needs. And it's really, I always thought automation was removing people from the process, sort of in that manufacturing style of thinking about automation, that automation would speed it up and you take people out of the process in the factory. In this experience with us, this tool, Ansible, has brought our people together. They're communicating together. They're actually getting work done together. There's such a rich respect between the teams now that actually has resulted from actually just having an open playbook that they can see what's actually happening. And that, to me, from a business perspective, means I have actually a happier team that's working together. We're working together more effectively. We're returning more capabilities to the company, and that's actually a really awesome outcome from this story.
Absolutely. Okay, on to our second story. I'll get into the title maybe at the end here, but Katrinka, you want to kick us off?
Sure. So you know what, keeping up with containers. Obviously, containers are a plethora of output for our team. We do have responsibilities for the product release part of our cycle. So one of the things that we were looking at is how can we actually make sure that as we release products, we also have the abilities to bring containers to the market.
So about 6 months ago, we were building containers, all kinds of containers, but there were probably maybe a dozen containers that we were very serious about that we had to build all the time correctly. Over the last 6 months, or my timelines might be a little bit off here, but that number actually grew to 117, and then with Docker V2 and some stuff, like the number of containers that we need to build is just mind-boggling. And we got hit with a big security vulnerability, and we feel like it's really, so we host all of these containers. My team does all of these random things, and we host a lot of these containers along with IT, and we thought it would be really lame if we were hosting containers that contain security vulnerabilities, right? That's like we're hosting like these bombs on our website, and that seems really lame. Now, most people, when they fire up a container, they're going to update it, they're going to get the fix, and everything's going to be fine, but it just felt really wrong. So we took a stand, and we said, we're not hosting anything that has known vulnerabilities in it. So that introduced another problem. That means we have to rebuild these immutable objects all the time, and it's a huge pain in the butt. When we started doing it, our build system could do about 7 containers an hour. That just wasn't going to cut it, especially when we're expecting to be, we might be near 1,000 containers before long, right? So that's just not going to get us there. So we set out and we did one of these partnerships. We partnered with the OpenShift dedicated team, and we built a new build system, and it's fast, reliable, and wow, is it cool. So what we can do now is we built it so that it's a true sort of hybrid model, so we can scale out to the cloud when we need all kinds of stuff. And what's really interesting about this, I have some numbers on the next slide, but we worked with the OpenShift team, the actual developers that make the product, along with the upstream folks and all these other folks, and we put this whole thing together. We did the whole thing in about 3.5 months. In fact, it's going live like any minute now. But the title comes down to, I work in the Westford office, and I'm walking down the hallway one day, and this happened to be the same day when we were starting to load test this new build system. So we basically have think of a volume knob. We can crank this thing all the way up, and it fires up all these builders all over the place in the OpenShift dedicated cloud. And we were cranking this thing up that day, and I'm walking through the Westford office, and I see all these people like coming out of the office and like this mass exodus, and I don't hear a fire alarm or anything, so I don't know what the heck is going on. And basically, our internet connectivity had failed. This was a big outage all up and down the East Coast. But at the time, I didn't know that. All I knew was that my team was now cranking up this really powerful build system, which maxes out all of our pipes and all kinds of stuff. So I'm walking through the building, and I just see all these people leaving. We're going home. We can't do anything. And I'm just, in my head, I'm like, okay, that's our fault. I know that we broke the internet somehow here. And thank God it wasn't our fault. But I was 100% certain when I got back to the desk that we would have caused that outage. Thank goodness we didn't. So this next slide is an example of what I was talking about with the vulnerability. So before we embraced OpenShift as our build system, and I can't say enough about how cool it is, we had to do 116 image rebuild. You guys might remember the glibc vulnerability. This is kind of what triggered this whole thing. It wasn't too long ago. So we had to rebuild 116 images that we identified contain the glibc vulnerability. It took us 3,120 minutes, which included a Saturday, and it took 12 people to rebuild all of these things with speed, right? So there's a lot of hand cobbling and all kinds of stuff. The new image system that we have can actually build 116 images in 70 minutes. It's just like you can't believe that it actually happened. And we could even turn that up more if we wanted to, but then, that's just crazy. So, it's really exciting to be able to do something like this, to have real metrics and spit them out and be able to boil them down to this. So that's where we got using Red Hat products and partnering with the OpenShift team.
And so before you can go
please.
back a slide, just to go to the bottom line on the culture side, I mean, what was neat was Matt Hicks, who was leading this team from an engineering perspective. He came to us and he's like, hey, I need this because I'm responsible for OpenShift. My team is responsible for delivering that. I need you guys to be in lockstep with us as we bring these containers to market. But more importantly, he asked us, would you actually consider building on an OpenShift dedicated environment and work with us? And they actually put some significant resources behind
Absolutely.
the actual tuning of OpenShift dedicated for us so that we could actually do this. So we actually are building OpenShift containers on OpenShift dedicated, bringing that to our customers. And it's just been a wonderful partnership with the engineering team on OpenShift engineering, with the OpenShift operations team that's actually there supporting OpenShift dedicated on a 24/7 basis around the clock, and with Jay's P&T DevOps team. So these teams previously really hadn't worked a whole lot together, and it was a great opportunity for them to come together and solve a Red Hat problem and solve a problem that is important for us, especially with the real life experience of that CVE. There was no way we were going to be able to lock 12 people away every time we have a vulnerability that's going to be impacting, the containers that we were trying to bring out to customers, right? So there's no way we would have had the ability to do that, keep up with that pace. So from an operational perspective, we had to find a solution, and we found the partnership was a great way for us to do that. Again, sort of that balancing act of the conversations and keeping those communication lines open between teams.
Definitely. And that was a partnership between IT, the security groups. It was basically any of the technology groups that Red Hat got involved in one way or another. And in the process of having all those eyes looking at this problem, we actually found 5 high severity blocking defects in the product. And we got those things fixed. That wouldn't have happened if we didn't do this, which is just another thing, like you go home at night, you say, we did it. It's awesome. Okay, on to our third story.
So this one is really just sort of a classic Red Hat scaling challenge, right? Over the years, we've grown. Over the years, we've had a variety of just different ways that we've built out our infrastructure. And in partnership with IT, we wanted to actually look at how can we find some efficiencies. One of the goals that we set out about 3 years ago was to try to find ways to strive to find about 15 minutes a day in every developer's life at Red Hat. And it was just a simple way of saying, let's make sure we're doing the right things to make their jobs easier. And in this case, what you're going to hear about is how we had 4 different message bus tools and how we partnered with our IT team to actually bring that together.
Yeah, so I think we have Narayanan who's presenting tomorrow, same stage, 4:45 p.m., same time. So I'd encourage you to come back and you'll hear some IT perspectives on this. But we basically had 4, maybe even more message buses. I mean, we were pretty good at doing some of this stuff, but everybody was doing it on their own. And obviously when you have 4 message buses, that's like having, 4, I don't know, it's like having 4 email systems or 4 internets that couldn't interact with each other. It just doesn't make sense. So working with IT, they drove a lot of this fun stuff for us, and now we have one corporate message bus. And that was really hard because everybody wanted control, and you can only imagine the things that come along with that. But once we got done, it's amazing how powerful this is and how many ideas are being born from this. So, one of the first things we did, we had been asked for 2 years to email a user when a scratch build was completed. And we couldn't do that for a variety of reasons. We didn't want to muck around with some 15-year-old code and some other things. So we just ignored the request for 2 years. As soon as this message bus came up and suddenly our build system could talk to other systems and all kinds of stuff, we did this request in, I think, 2 days, Rob? Or 1 day or something? And we actually got an email from one of our users that said, like, oh, holy crap, who enabled emails for scratch builds? This is awesome. Like, so we're not maybe as good at communicating what we do sometimes because we surprise the user with it, but this user who had been fully aggravated with this situation for 2 years suddenly just got the email, and it works great. And we did that in a day, and it just wouldn't have been possible before. So, I put some other examples on here. They're just, these things are just coming out of the woodwork at this point, but, just basic requests that we couldn't do before, we can do now. So let's say you wanted a packaging request. It would typically take us about 3 days to do that. We now do it in a day. And I got all the savings there, but just these 4 examples, it's 2,000 person days that we saved every year by using and implementing with a team, a corporate message bus and plugging in all the other technologies into this thing. If you want to talk more about message buses, like I said, we could talk about that all night. But this is one of those things that, by being transparent and using kind of an open decision-making framework, which Red Hat is really good at, we got to a really good result. And this is enabling all kinds of new stuff. Okay.
All right, so short story number 4. So I challenged the team to think about ways that we can save money so we can invest in the business in other areas. And this one is really talking about our capital expenditure side of things. So Jay's team took it to heart and they said, well, we've got this idea of a repo depot. How could we reclaim some of the hardware that's out there that's maybe not being utilized as much? And I'm sure for any of you that are in the audience that are ops people, this is something that you're probably struggling with too. So we took this on, and the difference in this story is not necessarily that there is a specific Red Hat product, but it's the spirit of the team in the way that we were working as a DevOps group or an ops dev group, whichever way you want to coin the phrase. But the way we started to work, the communication, this group took this to heart, and out of this came some amazing results. So Jay, what did Josh's team do?
Yeah, this is an example. This is like a participate example. I didn't actually line that up on purpose, but this is a team. We call them our labs and capital management team, and these are the guys that run these 8,000 boxes or 8,000 nodes that I talked about before. So they're managing labs all over the planet, and these labs are the labs that all of our developers and everybody are using to make the products and test the products. So, these guys were technically proficient, but we had this CapEx problem, right? Our company is growing very quickly. CapEx doesn't typically grow at the same rate as a company. And so we started to look at this creatively, and we just challenged the lab team to come up with some ideas on how to handle this. And, these folks were used to doing their job really well, but they were never sort of confronted and said, like, hey, like, what can you guys add to the big picture here? And these guys just lit up. And they're like, oh, you want to know how we can do it? Okay. And, they came up with all kinds of ideas, and one of them was this thing we're now calling it DSAL, D-S-A-L, but that means DevOps Savings and Loan. So what we did was we came up with a program where, let's say Matt over here needs 10 servers. This happens a lot at many companies. You need 10 servers, we get you 10 servers, we set up, deploy them, all that kind of stuff, and then Matt uses them, and then Matt one day decides to leave, or Matt's done with them, and these servers just sit there burning power forever, right? And that's how we just get this big growing thing. So when you look at output from a group or sort of the amount of work that we've done, I like to look at, say, I don't know, there's all kinds of metrics we could use, but one would be builds, right? So 2 years ago, we did something like 25,000 builds in a year. Today, we do 99,000. So we've actually quadrupled the amount of output that we've had. And this is just because we have all these emerging technologies and we're just doing more stuff as a company. So my team has to, create all these things and output all these things. So we're not going to get 4 times the CapEx. So in this case, by using this savings and load program, over the course of this year, we're targeting, our goal was to save $350,000. That was our goal. We started small. We didn't know how well this would work. We're on target now to save about $800,000, which is actually a 6% reduction in CapEx. So we're growing our output by 4 times. We're reducing our CapEx by 6. And we're using it with, we're using a bunch of technologies to do this, a bunch of Red Hat technologies, all of Ansible scheduling technologies, all that kind of stuff. But what's interesting here is we're saving the hardware, reducing CapEx, but we're now also guaranteeing 100% utilization of the hardware, which is weird. You say, well, what the heck does that mean? How do we know that Matt's really using it? So what happens is, if Matt is done with his 10 servers, right now we have a problem that there's a line. People love this program, so there's a line of people waiting for the servers. So we can guarantee utilization just because we have a line, but let's say the line died out. We then take those servers and we put them back into we have a tool called Beaker, which is an internal tool where you can just sort of pull machines out temporarily. We put those machines back into this tool, and now that pool grows, and that tool is heavily used.
It's throttling.
Yes. So whenever we buy hardware now, we can basically guarantee that it will be utilized 100% of the time until it dies, which is a really cool thing to be able to say. And the lab team came up with all this stuff, and it's awesome. And I guess the message here, the reason why we're so proud of this is because, taking a team like a bunch of lab guys, some people would refer to these rack and stack guys, like that kind of stuff. These guys are now driving significant changes to the organization. And they've also reduced, by doing this, they've reduced deployment times. So let's say you ordered these 10 servers and they come in and they sit on the dock. It used to take us it could have taken us maybe 3 weeks to get these things out of a box, put into a rack on the network so you could actually use them. It now takes us 5 days to do that with this system, and the team, I didn't even encourage them to do this. They came down and said, this year we're getting it down to 2.5 days. So 2.5 days from it could be 100 servers, 2.5 days from when they show up at our loading dock, you can use them. And that's just an incredibly powerful thing. When you go and you talk to the developers and they're waiting for this, especially for some exotic architecture or something weird that's not easily accessible, we can provide that very quickly. And that's awesome. And now, with the other piece of this is now when we go into budgeting season, people are now just throwing the budget at us. Right? They don't even want to deal with it anymore. They say, I need 10 servers. I'm just going to ask these guys, and it's just going to happen. And that's really cool. Very proud of these guys for that.
So we're going to sum up the 4 stories for you and just sort of give you sort of a sense of some of the tips and tricks. So remember the story of sort of the Tim Burke came to Jay's leadership team? Well, Denise Dumas works for Tim, and she's the VP of Platforms Engineering, where Red Hat Enterprise Linux and all the pieces around that come to you from her engineering team. And she now is saying, we'll go nowhere without PNT DevOps. So to me, that says it all, that our stakeholders have seen that we've listened to them, and we're partnering with them, and we're bringing this together as a joint effort to actually drive Red Hat and Red Hat engineering. And we actually have an internal phrase, we call it supercharging Red Hat engineering, and we feel like we're actually on the path to doing that. We have so much more work to do and so many more things that we have on our roadmap, but we are well on our way. Do you want to go through a couple of just the tech tips and tricks that you
well, I like
you don't have to read it all.
Well, it's your statement. I like it, but I'll steal it. It's at the end there. You may be the smartest person in the room, but you aren't smarter than the whole room. That's just, Katriga likes to say that, and I think that that's just amazing. And every time we've engaged an organization, and partnered with them and come up with a solution, every single time that we've done it, it's been a great experience. It's been tough at the beginning, right? I think the previous presentation said, sort of hug it out when you get into these situations. But we hold the badge up a lot when we get in these situations, and we say, the back of every Red Hat badge, I should pull it out and show, but it says, "We are Red Hat." And I think in many companies, you can get into these internal arguments and you forget that you're all working for the same mission. So we kind of hold those badges up and say, we are all Red Hat. We're all going to win or we're all going to lose in this. And, it kind of resets everybody's expectations. Like, oh, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be having this, religious war with you here. Like, let's pick a technology and move forward. And the solutions that we get, like this lab team solution, one thing I didn't mention about that is they went out and they just talked to all the stakeholders. They never used to do that. They went out and they said, like, what can we do better? All that kind of stuff. How could we do this? Well, what if we did this? What if we did that? And we just end up with really, it's an obvious thing, but when it happens, it's cool.
I think if you know what your stakeholder needs, and if you can put yourself in their shoes and understand what they're trying to deliver for their stakeholders, it actually gives you a whole lot of point of view to understand sort of the business value that's being created. So for the labs guys, it was one of those things where they just hadn't really spent a lot of time thinking about the impact that they had to our internal teams. Now they understand that. Now they're actually really motivated, as Jay said, to bring that deployment window down to 2.5 days from the time that the hardware shows up, because they know that the folks that are leaning on them, relying on them for that hardware to be in production, allows them to have that sort of sense that they're contributing to Red Hat. So for us, it's been a lot about just, as in some cases, we have had to lower our ego in order to lean into some of these conversations. I think that's a really important sort of way of thinking about this, is that you don't have to necessarily think that you've got all the answers. It's definitely true, the partnership between our stakeholders and understanding the value we create and the value we bring along the way is actually giving us, Red Hat engineering a lot more value overall. I guess the only other one that I would pull out is tools do lead to world peace. I mean, I know a lot of people think DevOps there is not a product for DevOps, but there are, in our examples, normalizing on a tool has actually helped us create common communication grounds. Ansible on the management side and Fuse for the messaging layer, they have definitely given us the ability to standardize some of the pieces of the communication vehicles to allow our teams to be more effective at communicating. So don't underestimate that there are great technologies out there that actually do help in creating a DevOps environment that allow you to have those communication capabilities that tie the organizations together. It's important to build those tools into the solution, but culture probably should be at the top of the list, in my opinion, and then work your way down to process and tools at the end. But for sure, I think great tools do lead to world peace.
Yeah. And the only other one I want to highlight was the transparency thing. Be transparent. Katrinka's a great boss. She allows this to happen, but we came out and we just basically we showed everybody all of our problems, and we said, here's all the things that we suck at. I mean, that's the exact verbiage we used, and we showed failure rates and all kinds of stuff, and it was kind of like, okay, we're a new team. You can either yell at us and make fun of us, or you can look at all the problems we have and try to help us solve these things. And people, I don't know if it's a Red Hat thing or what, but people came out of the woodwork and like, okay, we'll help you guys. Like, you guys aren't, this pompous, sysops team or this, everything.
This mysterious black box, right?
So we basically just opened everything. We went from closed to completely opened, and it really worked well. Right, and people started to trust us when they see that, like, oh, these are just humans. They don't, they're not the obnoxious, stereotypical sysops kind of get out of here thing, and it really worked. Yeah. And people, it was all about trust. People really started trusting us. It was almost like overnight when we started doing these things. In fact, we had a tool. I don't want to mention this tool, but we had a tool when I first took over the team. Of course, I was going through all the different teams, and they were telling me about all the tools that they ran and what was good and all this kind of stuff. And they're showing me this tool, and I won't name the tool specifically because I don't want to insult anyone, but I'm looking up in the URL field of the tool, and I see, and it says Two-Face, like twoface.redhat.com, and I go, why would you name the tool Two-Face, right? That's kind of weird. And I was like, oh, well, we named it that because it has two sides. We have the side that we show our stakeholders, and then we have like the real side. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And like, well, if this disk or this failure, if this disk array goes out for a couple hours, Nobody needs to know about that. So we'll just show ourselves that so we know to fix it, but we'll only show the stakeholders like major events if it was out for a couple days or something. And I was like, whoa, like, is that really, how things are operating? And this was just, a small group within a group. This wasn't the whole company or anything, but that mentality was spread in enough places that it was causing damage. Because people would come to us and say, hey, I think the disk array just went out, and be like, no, look at the tool. It's fine, it's green. Can't you see that? And then by the time they got back to their desk, maybe it was working again. But now we can actually show people, yeah, we have 4% downtime. We were upgrading it, somebody tripped over the wire, something happened, and like, oh, yeah, we've done that before too.
Again,
so we're humans.
But they now your team now has an appreciation for the business connection that
Yes.
more and more that we're trying to build so that they appreciate that being open and being transparent is a little bit more of a smoother way to operate. So to sum it up, we no longer have a banana pickle problem, but we actually now are enabling Red Hat engineering to create bunches of bananas, banana chips, banana smoothies, whatever, we're in partnership with them. And we really do feel like we're actually well on our way to sort of leveraging this DevOps mindset and culture and really delivering real value to Red Hat. And I hope you've appreciated hearing some of our stories, and it's given you an appreciation for some of how you can use both the culture and the technology to arrive at these outcomes. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you guys
Appreciate
for coming.
Appreciate it.